tonight on CBC Vancouver News. With another deadly avalanche in BC, more questions.
This is the most difficult day of my life.
And what we know about the victims. Nordstrom is winding down Canadian operations. That means all BC stores are closing.
That's a bit sad. I mean, it is the one-stop shop for everything.
Yeah, just feel bad for the people who works.
Massive job losses and what it means for the future of department stores. An interim deal reached for Canada's women's soccer players.
Time is so limited for a national team athlete, and they would just want the best out of every moment they're ever on the team. And so we need to give that to them.
How close it gets to achieving equality with the men's team.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Deep sorrow on display in the mountains outside Invermere tonight after yesterday's deadly avalanche, which killed 3 people and left 4 hurt. It happened during a heli-skiing excursion. Aaron Collins has more on the heartbreak being felt here in BC and beyond.
The majestic beauty of the Rockies, skiers from around the world drawn to ski hills here. But for those looking for better snow, the backcountry is often the answer.
It was a one-time chance and we decided to do it now.
But their heli-skiing trip scheduled for today canceled at the last minute.
Good luck for us that we have not arrived one day earlier to do our trip. Then it would have been our accident.
9 skiers and a guide took off with the same company yesterday, one that's been flying here since the 70s. This trip ending in tragedy.
Again, this is the most difficult day of my life.
The group's ski day ended just after noon, an avalanche killing 3 in the party.
It is impossible to put into words the sorrow that we feel and the sadness that is shared by our guests, their families, and all of our staff.
4 other skiers were injured, flown here to this hospital in nearby Invermere.
The community of Invermere, it's a little on the quiet side today, and people are, I think, in shock at what's happened.
Beautiful as they are, these peaks can also be deadly. Warm weather and a weak snowpack making this avalanche season treacherous.
This has been a horrific avalanche season for British Columbia. So for people who are thinking about going into the backcountry, please be extremely cautious.
A warning to be heeded. 12 people have already died in avalanches in BC mountains this year. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Invermere, BC.
The CBC's Aaron Collins joins us now from Invermere. Aaron, what can you tell us about the victims?
Well, not a lot, Anita, and that's because the RCMP has asked us specifically not to reveal any identities or any identifying information about these folks, and that's because they want to make darn sure that they've had an opportunity to notify their next of kin and make sure, families aren't learning about this tragedy over the radio or over the television. So we're respecting that. But what I can say is that notifying those families may take some time, and that's because we know that all 9 of the skiers, not counting the guide that had them out in the backcountry, are from outside of Canada. So obviously it could take some time to track down those families.
Aaron Collins reporting tonight from Invermere. Thank you. WestJet has confirmed that a plane was forced to make an emergency landing in Kelowna because of a mechanical issue. No injuries have been reported, and the plane was traveling from Kamloops to Calgary when it was diverted. Airport staff say the issue was an engine out, which is where an aircraft loses power in one engine, but it can fly with the other engine that's working. Staff also say despite initial reports, the engine was not on fire when the plane landed. Well, some news tonight that will change Vancouver's retail landscape and see more than 2,000 people across the country laid off. Nordstrom is closing all of its stores across Canada, including the 2 here in BC. The company claims it has lost money every single year here since it opened in 2014. Dan Burrett is live outside that massive Nordstrom on Robson Street downtown. Dan, how many employees will lose their jobs in this province specifically?
643, Anita. 600 or so of them work here in the massive store downtown at Robson and Howe. 50 of them or so work at the Nordstrom rack in Langley. They're among 2,500 people across this country who are set to lose their jobs. Now, this downtown location opened to great high-end fashion fanfare in 2015 in a space once occupied by Eaton's, then Sears. Nordstrom has 13 stores across this country, but in court filings, the company says its Canadian business lost money every single year it was open. It blames high costs, a lofty U.S. dollar, flat sales, COVID, and, quote, lack of brand awareness. The CEO, Eric Nordstrom, reportedly told a conference call that Canadian employees would be treated with fairness and respect, and a trust will be set up to help them as stores close. As for shoppers,
everybody found out the news today. Some people by email, some people by the other people talk about that, and we're like all shook because it's like so sudden.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh heavens.
Yeah, you look shocked to hear this.
I'm terribly shocked.
It's a shame because it's a big building.
My favorite hangout place. I love the coffee, and I've made friends with all the associates. So I'm really, it's really sad. I wish they wouldn't.
To be honest, I never shop in this kind of shops. So for me, it's like, I don't care.
Nice place. I didn't know that was happening. I thought they were doing pretty well.
the company's Canadian website was to be shut down today. If you've ordered something before today, the company says it will be fulfilled and gift cards will be honored until the end of liquidation for in-store purchases. They actually plan to shut down the stores, wind them up by the end of June. Nordstrom is the latest U.S. chain to pull up stakes in Canada. Just weeks ago, Bed Bath & Beyond announced it was closing all 65 of its stores. And just keep in mind, this store is almost 230,000 square feet, essentially half a city block. We've asked Cadillac Fairview, which operates Pacific Centre, what happens next in this space. They have not yet gone back to us. You can imagine with all of the retailers that have come and gone in this space, the property taxes on a property this size will be huge, and any renovations will cost a bundle. Anita.
No kidding. Dan Burrett live tonight, downtown Vancouver. Thank you. Retail expert David Ian Gray is with us now. David, what does this all mean for Pacific Centre in downtown Vancouver? Because Nordstrom is a massive anchor tenant.
They are really going to be on their heels, and it's a hole that's going to affect other tenants in the property as well as the surrounding downtown. Nordstrom is a really key part of the retail landscape in the city, and I'd go so far as to say it may be irreplaceable. There's only a limited number of options in terms of filling that space, and it'll probably end up having to be divided up. The one opportunity might lie with someone like a Simons if they're interested in having a downtown presence, Montreal-based department store, if they get a sweetheart deal. And even then, I think the space might be too big for them.
Is this just one more signal that department stores are sort of dead?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my view for a long time has been it's kind of an archaic model. I don't think if we were inventing something in the retail landscape today from scratch, we'd come up with the idea of sort of one of these urban multi-floor flagship department stores with all these different products. But in their time and place, they were incredibly innovative and the forefront of fashion and retail. But I don't really know if they are existing today, except the fact that there's a lot of them and they hang around, and the owners are trying to do what they can with them. That said, I thought Nordstrom in the landscape of department stores actually did a pretty good job.
Retail expert David Ian Gray, Dig 360 Consulting. Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
RCMP are investigating the cause of a multi-vehicle crash on Highway 5 north of Kamloops. Mounties say it left 2 new arrivals from Afghanistan dead. It happened yesterday morning. A large pickup truck was hauling a trailer northbound when it was hit by a smaller truck heading south. The small truck then hit the SUV. 3 of the SUV's passengers died. 2 others were taken to hospital with serious injuries. Today, Premier David Eby extended his condolences to the survivors as well as their family and community.
This is a new arrival family from Afghanistan, so the layers of tragedy are profound for British Columbians, for them, for their friends, for the people who care about them, and for all of us. Our thoughts go out to them, family members in hospital right now, and thank you to the health.
The driver of the smaller truck, meanwhile, was also taken to hospital. Mounties say they were not seriously hurt. Meanwhile, a Chilliwack man has been handed a 5-year sentence for manslaughter after killing his intimate partner in 2019. Shane Travis Hughes was arrested and charged in relation to the death of Christine Denham after she was shot in her home. He was initially charged with second-degree murder but pleaded guilty to a lesser charge in court. And domestic violence advocates say that the 5-year sentence sends a harmful message.
Many women all across British Columbia are right now living in relationships and living in fear, and seeing this kind of sentence. It really does create a kind of chilling effect ultimately that can potentially create a situation where victims could lose hope.
Hughes only has 32 months remaining in custody since he started serving time in pretrial custody. He is under a lifetime firearms prohibition. Well, David Eby has revealed more details surrounding the province's investments in mental health support as part of the provincial budget. More treatment beds are coming as the province grapples with an increasing number of toxic drug deaths. As John Hernandez reports, the province has also pledged greater transparency when it comes to treatment wait times.
When people ask for help, when they're struggling with mental health and addiction challenges, there needs to be help available.
BC's Premier calls it a historic investment, more than $1 billion into mental health services, with the goal of getting more patients into treatment centres.
This includes 100 new substance use and treatment beds for adults, which will be available in communities across the province. Another 95 beds as part of a new Road to Recovery model of seamless care.
The pledge included in the 2023 budget comes as BC grapples with a toxic drug crisis that claimed more than 2,000 lives last year, with many patients waiting months to get into treatment beds.
Our goal, obviously, is to shrink those wait times, in some cases to zero.
A promise that has caught the attention of advocates who know just how hard it can be to get help.
The challenge is accessing services, whether that be through safer supply or addiction treatment. And if this announcement does shorten those wait times, then, it's a good first step.
A first step that those on the front lines say won't meet the surging demand, but can still make a big difference.
Just because demand outstrips supply, that doesn't mean we can't stop building. We have to keep moving towards making sure that that right care is available for people when they're ready.
The budget will also fund 4 new recovery sites with aftercare, and more than $100 million is earmarked for Indigenous-led treatment. Still, concern investments don't go far enough in addressing the need for safer supply.
There's many times that people have setbacks, and so using that illicit drug supply puts them at further risk, and so we just have to do a better job at supporting all pathways.
The province says improved access to safe supply will also come this year as it attempts to rein in an historic health crisis. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Home sales in the Lower Mainland are still in a slump, according to the latest data from the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. New numbers show sales for February totaled just over 1,800, down from roughly 3,400 homes sold in the same month last year. The board says the sales figures reflect a continued reluctance from prospective home sellers to list their properties. Now, that's pushed sales well below the historical average. Last month's sales are roughly 33% below the 10-year February sales average. Vancouver City Council has voted to end the city's policy requiring all employees and contractors to be paid the living wage rate, which this year is around $24. Exact details on the vote are not known. In a statement, the city writes that the living wage rate is difficult to administer because it's calculated annually and fluctuates every year. It also writes that council decided to implement what it calls a fair wage approach. This approach is based on a rolling 5-year average of the living wage rate, which the city says will, quote, smooth out annual fluctuations. After more than a year without a deal, the very public battle over a new contract for Canada's women's soccer team has been settled for now. Canada Soccer and team players say an interim funding agreement has been reached for 2022 to cover the past year when they were without a contract. It mirrors a similar deal with the men's national team, which includes per-game incentives and results-based compensation. The women are still seeking a permanent deal featuring pay equity with men's team's players.
You know, the men are also without a collective bargaining agreement, and they have to come to a deal with this on a CBA with Canada Soccer. But, you know, in terms of the pay equity, it's essentially all three sides have to come to terms with that. You know, both the men and the women's teams and the Canada Soccer Association. So.
Canada Soccer says new collective bargaining agreements for both the men's and women's teams are being negotiated. Well, the Commissioner of Canada Elections is launching its own investigation into allegations of Chinese interference in federal elections. Some of that alleged interference is connected to ridings right here in British Columbia. As Michelle Gassoub reports, Chinese Canadians are raising concern over Beijing's involvement, but they're also worried about backlash against Chinese diaspora.
The question of whether China interfered in Canada's federal elections plaguing the Prime Minister on his trip to BC.
The greatest targets of foreign interference are diaspora communities themselves. The Chinese government goes after Chinese citizens and Chinese parliamentarians.
Former Conservative MP Kenny Chiu lost his seat in Steveston, Richmond East in 2021. Chiu says he was targeted by interference in the form of false claims circulated on the Chinese messaging app WeChat. The Globe and Mail reported China's former consul general in Vancouver boasted about helping to defeat him.
Many of my constituents rely on informations and connections via this app called WeChat. And imagine if you hear that your MP, should he form part of the government, would put this ad and endanger.
A panel of top civil servants concluded that attempts to interfere with the 2021 election did not affect the results. And a redacted report assessing that panel's work said there are risks that concerns about foreign interference from a particular country can result in resentment and backlash against members of these communities, and that strategies to counter foreign interference need to guard against marginalizing diaspora communities.
The impact of an announcement of a threat of interference in the middle of an election campaign could be difficult to measure, and we have to make sure we're getting it right.
Chinese Canadian is not China.
The longtime commentator Gabriel Yu says the Chinese Canadian community is extremely politically diverse and would largely welcome an inquiry.
By not doing that, it would actually create a much worse atmosphere when Chinese Canadian would be suspected, and I think this is the wrong path. And today's society, I think we should actually be more transparent.
Today, the Commissioner of Canada Elections said her office has launched its own independent investigation into the last two federal elections, calling the circumstances exceptional. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
And a Commons committee continues to dig into those allegations that China interfered in Canada's last two federal elections. The accusations came to light in media reports that were based on leaked documents from Canada's spy agency, CSIS. And as Ashley Burke reports, the Commissioner of Canada's Elections Watchdog testified it is looking into complaints of meddling.
In a rare move, Canada's election watchdog revealed she's actively reviewing complaints of foreign meddling in the past two federal elections.
This review is ongoing as I speak to determine whether there's any tangible evidence of wrongdoing.
It comes after the Globe and Mail and Global News reported serious allegations about how Beijing attempted to interfere in the 2019 and 2021 elections. But the RCMP says no investigation is underway.
We did not receive any actionable intelligence that would warrant us to initiate a criminal investigation.
We did not see a spike in foreign interference activities during the 2021 election.
Top public servants who reviewed intelligence during those two election campaigns said there wasn't clear evidence of foreign interference that warranted alerting the public.
The panel was briefed about activities that were happening in ridings that were difficult to attribute to foreign interference at the time.
The head of CSIS, who's seen all kinds of classified intelligence, says officials did the right thing.
Based on my information and my experience, for what it's worth, Madam Chair, I would say that I concur with that conclusion.
One senior bureaucrat cautioned MPs about recent media reports based on leaked intelligence.
Intelligence is not truth. It's not, and it is often inaccurate or partial or incomplete or, in fact, designed to throw us off our track.
Morrison warned intelligence leaked out of context could hurt national security.
There are glaring historical examples, Madam Chair, even when that picture finally emerges of the intel being just plainly wrong. The war in Iraq comes to mind.
Amid all of this, the opposition is continuing to call on the federal government to launch a public inquiry. One Liberal MP today said that he's grappling with whether or not to support an inquiry because he says most of the information is classified and therefore impossible to make public. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Johanna Wagstaff is away tonight. Kuljeet Kaila is here. And Kuljeet, I know we're talking flakes, aren't we?
We are. Spring is still a couple of weeks away. We're not quite done with winter yet. Some flakes, but not too much. And we're going to start to see that after today. Right now, clear conditions outside, a bit of cloud, not too bad. But by Friday afternoon, evening, we're going to start to see traces of snow again around mostly Vancouver. So again, we're dealing with higher elevations and then rain for most of Metro Vancouver. This will continue overnight Friday into Saturday morning, about 10 to 15 millimeters. We're not going to really need the shovels, I'm hoping, and it won't stick because it will be snow mixed with a lot of rain. Now, current temperatures outside, 5 degrees at the airport and 4 degrees in Pitt Meadows, 4 on the North Shore. In Abbotsford, 4 degrees, and out in Hope, 3 degrees. Getting pretty cold out there this evening. Overnight temperatures across BC with the wind chill will drop down to -20 up in Fort Nelson, -13 for Fort St. John, Dease Lake and Smithers, and -12 for Prince George. For us, our overnight conditions looking like this. Sunset just before 6 o'clock under clouds. We will see some sunshine tomorrow, and then the rain starts. 80% risk of rain and 8 degrees for tomorrow. I'll have your full 7-day forecast coming up. Anita?
Talk to you later. Thanks. Limiting how much time teens spend online. TikTok is putting in limits, but will they actually work? A live interview breaking it down next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. A pair of seniors in Ottawa is heading to the pool to help save lives. They recently got recertified so that they can give back to the community during a lifeguard shortage.
Rumor has it you're the oldest lifeguard in Ontario.
That's what I hear.
And the Lifeguard Society thinks maybe even Canada.
Oh, that would be interesting to find out. I'm 80 years of age, 81 in March the 10th. Thought, well, it would be nice to become a lifesaver again. I was in between jobs and that sort of thing, and lifeguarding came up, and I took it on part-time, particularly here at the Sportsplex. One of the requirements is that you go down the 5 meters and pick up a 20-pound brick. I actually had reservations of whether I could do that, but actually on my first go, I actually did it, and I surprised myself.
How was that?
It was fun.
I first trained to be a lifeguard in the early 1970s. In between, I became a teacher, and I taught for 32 and a half years. And then I retired, and I was looking for something to do. I got into coaching of swimming, and then through the city, I became a lifeguard. It was difficult at first because some of the techniques are very much changed, like they're better, more efficient, safer. So I had to kind of relearn those, but a lot of it did come back. I'd heard through a lot of friends and family about lifeguard shortages, on the news, and I realized that a lot of the programming was being cut back. And I thought, it's a way I can kind of give back to the community, and I can help others who share a love of aquatics.
You can do this at any age.
Okay.
If I can do it at 80, I'm sure I should be able to do it when I'm 100, I hope.
Okay.
Instagram is expanding a new age verification method in Canada using artificial intelligence. As of today, there are 2 new ways to prove you're 18 or older. You can get 3 adult friends to vouch for you, or you can upload a video that will get run through an age estimating program. The company says knowing how old its users are allows it to create age-appropriate experiences for teenagers on the app. Now, TikTok is introducing daily 60-minute screen time limits for kids and teens, but there's a catch. Parents can actually extend the cap for children under the age of 13 by inputting a password, and users who are 13 to 17 can do so on their own. A date for the launch has not yet been announced, but TikTok says this will become a default feature in the coming weeks. Well, the impact of social media on the development of kids and teens is a growing concern for parents. So will any of these tools actually help? For insight, I'm speaking with Jesse Miller tonight live. He consults on social media education with Mediated Reality. Jesse, what's the point of a 60-minute cap on screen time with TikTok if a teen can simply get rid of it?
Well, a couple of things, Anita, that stand out to me are that we look at parents and what they believe screen time values to be. And so if TikTok can make parents feel more comfortable about how their kids are using it and then seeing the kids circle back asking for more, then the home value can be somewhat reflected. But the hard part here is about age gating. The kids can put in any age. They don't really have any verification process to that. So it is about parents choosing how they set their kids' accounts up, how they oversee that, and then how they choose to participate with their children.
Now, we're seeing way more screen time addiction. What are the dangers of that with kids?
Yeah, a couple of points. In 2019, we did identify scientifically that screen time addiction wasn't necessarily about being good or bad. It was about how we used it. Was it pro-social? Was it participatory? And so we can mitigate some of the concerns about kids and mental health and the fears around screen time by looking at how they use the screens for learning, how they use it for engagement. And if we learned anything from the pandemic, screens are somewhat necessary when it comes to work from home, learn from home. But the idea of just scrolling through and just kind of being on it aimlessly, that's where we have to look at whether or not there are mental health impacts for a young person when they're trying to avoid something, when they're trying to engage in a community. And so that oversight piece that TikTok is trying to teach parents here is that with their family pairing, you can actually get good family engagement. You can share videos, you can engage together and talk about the media influences. But anybody, no matter their age, is somewhat prone to being on any social media platform and just going through because you're trying to avoid participating in a space that maybe requires a bit of your presence.
Yeah, I was just going to say at any age, that doom scrolling, it really does affect your mental health, seeing everything that you're seeing on social media. What needs to actually change to make a difference here? Is it simply a parent's responsibility, or can we actually force these platforms to do better to protect kids?
What's interesting about TikTok is that they are very kind of seen as addictive. And the thing is that TikTok's algorithm is very similar to gaming, and gaming what we would see traditionally in the casino. So the idea that a person's sitting at a slot machine and doesn't know how to get away, that kind of euphoric rush of hitting a jackpot is what we look for in that idea of participation in those spaces to keep an audience looking at TikTok. And so when we look at screen time addiction, TikTok is a lot more of a favored platform for that conversation than, let's say, Instagram. We can only kind of pay attention to our friends so much. So within that, this idea of TikTok limiting, they're trying to get more and more parents to say, okay, participate with your kids, reflect as a family, and they're also introducing limiting for the adults 18 and over and saying, hey, where do you want to be? And should we add some friction to your day to limit how you can choose to participate in this space?
Jesse Miller joining us live tonight. Jesse consults on social media education with Mediated Reality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hundreds of girls poisoned by toxic gas, intentional attacks in Iran, and how the regime is responding. Next.
It was a street party held in honor of the IOC, spanning 3 city blocks. It lasted for 5 hours and attracted tens of thousands of people.
We think the Olympics should be in Vancouver, bottom line.
But the 18 visiting members only caught a glimpse of it as they drove by. Instead, the group traveled from one venue to the next, part of a 4-day tour to judge if Vancouver has what it takes to host the Games. Team leader Gerhard Heiberg chose his words carefully when describing his first impressions.
Very, very nice. If we can get the same weather tomorrow, which we had yesterday, it would be even better.
Bid organizers are calling it the Sea to Sky Games, hoping to sell the IOC on Vancouver's diverse culture and landscape. But there are potential roadblocks. The IOC has already expressed concerns over this winding stretch of highway that links Vancouver and Whistler. There's already a $600 million improvement plan that will go ahead regardless.
If we are fortunate enough to be granted the games, then that program will start sooner rather than later.
Little snow in the mountains could also be a problem. Still, bid organizers say so far, so good.
It's going great.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's fun.
The bid committee says public support is no longer an issue. The IOC is happy with the results of a plebiscite where 64% of those who cast ballots said they support the games. It also did its own survey. Those results are expected soon. But despite the plebiscite results, there are still some who don't want the games. One group crashed the street party.
IOC go home! IOC go home! We want the game! We want the game!
The IOC evaluation team will continue its tour of Vancouver and Whistler. The Prime Minister will be in town later this week to throw his support and more money behind the bid. All of this will end up in the IOC's final report due in May. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Vancouver.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back.
And that's what empowered nations and empowered people to just literally steal land.
This is a consequence of your actions!
And it's time to give land back.
Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Concern is growing around incidents in Iran that appear to be toxic gas attacks on girls' schools. More than 1,000 girls have become ill in the last 3 months. As Chris Brown explains, human rights activists believe it's punishment aimed at young women for opposing the regime.
Whatever the substance is, it's left perhaps 1,000 Iranian girls and women in dozens of schools across the country, coughing, choking, and unable to breathe. First, we smelt gas, she said. Then someone in class became dizzy. When this worried mother showed up and blamed authorities, she was viciously attacked.
This is one response.
Human rights advocate Azadeh Pourzand believes the poisonings are designed to scare Iranian women into staying silent.
The regime wants to deprive Iranians, and in particular women, of even of the little feeling of safety they may have had socially, as a way of collective punishment.
Women have been among the most persistent opponents of Iran's regime, at the forefront of protests in the aftermath of the death of Mahsa Amini. She was beaten to death after being arrested for not wearing a headscarf. This London-based Iranian-Canadian journalist believes the poisonings could be the work of vigilante groups, acting with the implicit consent of Iran's government, and his team's own investigation suggests they've resorted to other terrible tactics.
They have been showing some films about porno, showing bestiality. They're showing this to high school children, mostly girls, saying that, see, if the Islamic Republic falls, this can happen in Iran.
Such measures could signal a shift by Iran's hardliners of copying the most egregious examples of repression now happening next door in Afghanistan.
Iran and Afghanistan, they are run by aging, misogynist, fundamentalist, revolutionary, corrupt men.
Iran's protests have quieted this winter, but advocates predict they'll intensify this spring and that these poisonings are meant to divide opponents and deter them from returning to the streets. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
In Hong Kong, a fire tore through the upper floors of a skyscraper that's under construction. These dramatic pictures show flames rising to the top of the building in Tsim Sha Tsui neighborhood. Eyewitnesses say the area is part of a redevelopment project. The cause of the fire is unknown, and so far there have been no reports of casualties. Well, today's G20 Foreign Ministers Meeting was dominated by the war in Ukraine. And as Salima Shivji tells us, Russia traded accusations with Western countries, overshadowing other critical issues that many hoped would be the center of attention.
They arrived one by one, with smiles that belied the tensions simmering under the surface, as the war in Ukraine overshadowed everything else. The U.S. Secretary of State began the day avoiding Russia's Sergei Lavrov until a brief chat on the sidelines between the two foreign ministers. Less than 10 minutes of FaceTime, a first since Russia invaded Ukraine more than a year ago.
I told the foreign minister what I and so many others said last week at the United Nations and what so many G20 foreign ministers said today. End this war of aggression.
That strained atmosphere left India as host.
I welcome you to India.
In the tricky position of begging for the ministers to find some common ground.
We should not allow issues that we cannot resolve together to come in the way of those we can.
The host country, which has refrained from criticizing Russia but has called for an end to war, was keen to focus on key issues like crippling debt, food insecurity, and climate change.
It's a major test of India's diplomacy skills, and a lot is at stake for the country trying to take advantage of its role on the global stage as G20 hosts this year, aiming to position itself as a voice for all developing countries.
But inside the war-dominated talks, Canada's foreign minister among those pushing for a strong condemnation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. A full day of diplomatic discussions leading to progress on some issues only.
There was a chair summary because there were differences on the Ukraine issue which we could not reconcile between.
But no joint statement. Russia and China, the two holdouts, opposing language condemning the war as divisions deepen further. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Delhi.
Police in a Kyiv suburb have found more bodies, civilians believed to have been killed by Russian troops early in the war. Margaret Evans follows the work to unearth evidence of potential war crimes, and a warning, there are disturbing details and images, starting with the first one.
The earth on the edges of Kyiv still has secrets to offer up. Here, the bodies of 3 people buried in unmarked graves. It brings the number of civilians believed killed by Russian troops occupying territory around the Ukrainian capital to 1,373. Of the bodies found since the region was deoccupied last April, more than 700 were shot, the regional police chief is saying, from machine guns, pistols, or sniper fire. Police believe the 3 people exhumed here on the edge of a cemetery near Borodyanka were also shot. Investigators say a local resident claims to have found and buried the bodies in the early days of the war before fleeing to Western Ukraine, and that he only returned recently to tell them about it. They hope to establish identities through a DNA database of samples taken from family members of people still missing. Oleksandr Turovsky's son Sviatoslav was executed by Russian soldiers along with 7 other men on March 4th last year in nearby Bucha, the town where news of Russian atrocities first broke. He has an answer. A close friend does not. Her son's still missing. She took a DNA test, he says, but it's been a year and no one knows where he is. There are a lot of things still to find out. And in the cemetery next to the excavation site, a reminder of those Ukrainians still dying on the front lines. Soldiers' graves, usually marked with the Ukrainian flag. Margaret Evans, CBC News, near Borodyanka.
It's false information leading you to think a product is environmentally clean when it's anything but. Why some financial institutions are being accused of greenwashing. Next.
We're here on a blustery day in St. Andrews, New Brunswick. Let me take you inside Drewhaven Town and Country and show you something I've been working on that's an art project. This is the Cocktail Lounge in Drewhaven Town and Country, and it's a recreation of Bemelman's Bar in New York City. My name's Jeff Slater. I'm a visual artist in the area, and I was commissioned by the owner and proprietor of this establishment to paint Ludwig Bemelman's like murals in the Cocktail Lounge. Bemelman's was known for his cartoon, whimsical, illustrative characters, which are a mix of people and animals doing fun, sometimes mischievous things. A number of challenges in painting this mural. The first was getting the background right and getting that some depth and layers to get sort of that golden light, you know, the hue that feels so wonderful when you do come in. So that took a couple weeks at least, just playing with the surface, and it was all done with a brush. So it's a kind of a slow, painstaking process. Of, you know, just going around and around the room and trying to get the light right. I didn't realize how many people grew up with the Madeline series of books that Bemelman's wrote and illustrated, and I would say the vast majority of people recognize the illustrations because he did use a lot of the, like Madeline is in the Bemelman's Bar illustrations. He used characters from his books in this mural. So the people pick up on that very quickly and recognize that it's about Bemelman's. If you can tell a story with your art, and you can move people in the way that you intended, or even maybe didn't intend, that is the greatest joy that you have as an artist, to be able to move people with story.
we're sharing really important information with the public. And I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back.
And that's what empowered nations and empowered people to just literally steal land.
This is a consequence of your actions.
And it's time to give land back.
Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Some of Canada's biggest financial institutions are being accused of greenwashing. Critics say they offer customers the opportunity to invest in green businesses, but sometimes the money winds up in the hands of oil and gas companies. CBC News has learned Canada's financial sector is working to clean up its act, but as David Thurton reports, some say it's not doing enough.
When people think about sustainable investing, what often comes to mind is their money going to this, not this, which can be the case. This activist investor knows that well. She tried to move her money into green funds, only to find out those so-called sustainable investments fund fossil fuel companies.
And it's hard for people to understand that, so people might just blindly put it in and not realize that it's not the great, it doesn't, it's not 100%.
Now, there's a push for banks to bring clarity to their green claims, making sure investments that are supposed to be good for the planet really are. The federal government's Sustainable Finance Action Council is working on new definitions. And how does this prevent fears about greenwashing?
It's a real problem because today we don't have this common definition.
To counter this problem, two categories are being developed for sustainable investments. Green, for things like electric vehicles or net zero buildings, and transitional, for projects working to reduce emissions, like carbon capture technology in the oil sands.
Having that common definition throughout that investment chain is really important so that you have confidence that your money is going to solutions that matter for Canada.
But still, including the oil patch under the sustainability umbrella angers some.
There are incentives to reduce the process emissions for oil and gas already. We don't need to give them that fake sustainable label.
At a climate change conference this week, Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault defended the new categories.
We're trying to provide guidance and clear indications of what should be considered green investments and what shouldn't.
The pressure's on for Ottawa to endorse these sustainable investment recommendations to help attract the billions of dollars of investment that's needed for what some are calling the green industrial boom. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
Johanna Wagstaff is away. Kuljeet is here. And Kuljeet, I guess people won't fault you for being wrong today because it turned out to be a really nice day after all.
Yes. Yesterday I had said we'll get a couple of hours of sunshine. We ended up getting a lot more, and I like to be wrong in situations like that. I'm okay with that. But it started off very cloudy this morning, and we have a time lapse of that. Lots of clouds rolling through. We had tons of cloud activity this morning. And then as soon as they disappeared, the blue sky came in, and it stuck around for quite a few hours. So I think we really lucked out with the sunshine. It's not going to stick around for very long, though. We do have some more rain mixed with snow possibly coming our way this evening. Mostly cloudy conditions. This rain mixed with snow will be coming around Friday afternoon, evening. It'll happen overnight Friday into Saturday morning. Not a lot, though. No need to really get the big shovels out. It's not going to stick around. 10 to 15 millimeters of it total. Tomorrow's forecast across the province, Colder than usual along the coast for Prince Rupert, 5 degrees. It's about 3 degrees colder than it usually is this time of year. -5 up in Dees Lake with wet flurry conditions. Some flurries in Prince George as well, -1. Dry for Williams Lake and for Kelowna, and sunnier out in Cranbrook. 1 degree will be their high for tomorrow. Some notes for today. Today's high was 5 degrees. The average around this time of year is 9. So if you're feeling like it's colder than usual, you're pretty right. We're going to have some wind again tonight, 60 kilometers an hour. That'll be by the water. And look at this. Our humidity dropped by almost 20% from yesterday. It's only at 67%, so less moisture in the air. Looking at our long-term forecast, like I said, rain starting tomorrow, Friday into Saturday. It'll be pretty light by Saturday. Sunday, we will see some sunshine. Staying pretty stable around 5 degrees, but getting colder overnight, dropping down to 0. Chance of some more flurries by Monday, but we will return to the sunshine for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Temperatures will start to increase as well, Anita, up to around 6 degrees. And it'll start to feel a little bit more like spring finally.
Yeah, I'd say that looks pretty good. A lot of sunshine there, Kuljeet. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bringing athletes together of all types. We hear from para participants at the Canada Games in PEI next.
She loves to play in the snow and spend hours out there. Prior to having the skis, activities at the school were very limited, if not didn't exist. Outdoor activities in the wintertime because of the snow and only having wheeled applications for her to move about. It was remarkable. She immediately went through the deep snow. There was no questions. She could articulate the whole field at the school. There was no more issues with her only being restricted to walking in the hallways at school anymore. Shaylee has a dyskinetic cerebral palsy and a chromosomal deletion. It's a lot easier using this equipment rather than in a sleigh or something where you don't have seat belts or proper seating to hold somebody like Shaylee that's constantly moving. My kids and Kelly's kids, the designer for these skis, go to school together. And one day, Shaylee we were pushing Shaylee through the snow to get her into the school, and Kelly approached us and said, "Hey, I have an idea. We use this ski for different types of applications with strollers and stuff. Would you be interested in trying it with your daughter?"
So the skis, they fit all different types of wheel sizes, from very small front wheels, like 4 or 5 inches, up to the big wheels that you get on the big bike trailers, the chariots that you can tow, jog with, run with. It began 10 years ago that I needed to be able to get out. I needed to be able to get active with my child. So being snowboarders, downhill skiers, cross-country skiers, that's what we thought of, skis for wheels. They didn't exist, so we fabricated them. And then we formed a business so that we could share our product with like-minded people. And now we keep developing our product to accommodate more and more people. More and more people want to be active, want to be outdoors for their physical and mental health. Very simple retractable mechanism that attaches through your wheel and attaches onto the ski, and it takes minutes to put on, take off, and you're off on your trails. So whether it be for your dog wheelchair, dog stroller, kid stroller, wheelchair, transportation chairs, walkers, and if it's a wheel, then we normally can accommodate. It's just beautiful to be able to explore the different seasons with your stroller, your baby or your child or your adult in the device that they need to be in.
So previously we didn't have the ability to take Shaylee out because of that physical need of being able to get her from point A to point B. It was always leaving her at home with other caregivers and stuff. So as far as her quality of life is improved, 100%, and then having her involved and engaged with the family activities is even greater.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver Inbox.
On March 29th, join Leanne Young at the Zilly Cares Conversation on Care, a mental health fundraiser with special guests Dr. Gabor Mate and Dr. Mariam Zainadin. Get your tickets at zillycare.com. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox and keep connected with us.
Sports is meant to unite us, and nowhere is that taken more seriously than by athletes at Canada's Winter Games in Prince Edward Island. The 20-sport event wraps up this weekend, and as we hear from the CBC's Nancy Russell, all athletes compete on the same playing field.
This is a practice session for these sit-ski competitors from Team BC. Their equipment was late to arrive, so their competition was postponed for a day. The Paranordic standing competitors have already completed their first races at these games, including Denise Daw.
Oh my gosh, it's been actually life-changing, you know. I was introduced to Paranordic as a sport just a little over a year ago, and it's completely changed the way I view myself, the way I view my disability. Honestly, for the longest time, my disability was something that I would hide from people. I have symbrachdactyly, which means I'm missing a lot of my fingers, and I would always put my hand in a pocket or something. And now, having an opportunity like this has allowed me to actually embrace that and see it as a strength.
This competitor from Team Manitoba is taking part in his third Canada Games. He won a bronze medal in this race with the help of his guide.
He's played a really crucial part in my skiing, and I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing without him.
Graham Nishikawa is here at the Canada Games as a national development para-coach. He was an able-bodied skier who went on to guide Canada's Brian McKeever at the Paralympics and won multiple gold medals.
Through events like this at Canada Games, having the inclusion of para here is just so important for everyone to see it and become normal. Just seeing our para athletes just become part of the team.
This is where Mark Arendz first tried Paranordic sports, a journey that has taken him to the top of the medal podium at the Paralympics. He hopes having Paranordic events at the Canada Games will inspire others.
I hope it's eye-opening. I hope that we can showcase that, anyone can get out onto the snow once the infrastructure's there, and the willpower just to say, hey, this is something new and they can try it.
There are para-alpine events going on at Crab Mountain this week, and there are Special Olympians participating in figure skating.
Yeah, I think it's just really important to be included. You know, that's all anybody wants, is to have inclusion in their community and in sport. And so being part of this kind of major event, which is taking over the island, as you can see from the last week and a half that we've been here doing this, and they're part of something big and something special, I think it's just really important that all ability levels get that opportunity to shine.
More athletes of all abilities will get the opportunity to shine. Competition continues here at Mark Arendz Provincial Ski Park for the rest of the week. Nancy Russell, CBC News, Brookvale.
Yeah, para-athletes are really incredible. If you hadn't had a chance to watch some of them in action, it is absolutely a must at the Paralympics. It's fascinating to watch. Okay, we end our show tonight with a friendly Vancouver bus driver who has become a viral sensation after recording a video explaining to a rider's boss why she couldn't come to work.
Good morning. My name is Graham and I'm the bus driver. I'm with Ying. We are at a big snowfall. No joke, no lie. The buses are stuck. The buses are ordered not to move. Just to let you know what's going on this morning. And just to verify, there's the message we received on the computer telling us to pull over and wait for the snowplows. So if she's late for work, I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do. There's absolutely nothing we can do. We're all stuck. So hopefully this explains why she may not come in today, but stuff happens. Sorry.
Ying Shu was on the way to work at around 7:30 in the morning on the number 16 bus route. Her bus came to a stop after it was asked to pull over and wait for snowplows. That's when the bus driver named Graham offered to record a video for Shu to send to her boss. She told the CBC in an email that she really wanted to thank Graham for his friendly attitude and action. Yeah, sometimes you got to have a little proof, right? So thanks to Graham for that. A nice way to end tonight's show. A little bit of feel good. Thanks for being with us on CBC Vancouver News. Dan Burrett will be in this chair tomorrow. Have a good night.